You're listening to Catholic Family Podcast, Episode 6.
You're listening to the Catholic Family Podcast. I'm Kevin Davis, broadcasting from Reitenwinkel, Germany. I'm joined today with my brother, Paul Davis, as it is a Catholic Family Podcast. So I'm very happy to be joined by Paul, who is a former Marine. Is it possible to call you a former Marine? Or I guess that's kind of a misnomer.
Well, in technicalities, yes, former Marine's correct, but always a Marine.
Right. So as a former Marine, as a current in heart Marine, and as a father and as a Catholic, we wanted to discuss today the primary topic being leadership and the importance of leadership in today's society, and Paul's experiences as a captain in the Marines and having many people to lead, and what it means still now that he's out of the Marines, and how he can be a leader and how we can all be leaders in society that very, very desperately needs leadership. But first, Paul, I think we need to go through a little bit of your background, I guess, and start back when I don't even know where we started. Obviously, I know your background. So tell us what was your journey, I guess, to get from being a farm boy out in the eastern plains of Colorado to becoming a Marine?
Well, I can't say that there was a specific lightning rod type moment, but something like that is something I'd always wanted to do, to be honest. When I was in Montrose, I tried to become a volunteer firefighter for a while, and that didn't work out because they had like a year-long waiting list for some reason. I still don't really know why. And then when I moved up to Grand Junction for school, started looking into it, and actually, believe it or not, saw a poster hanging up in one of our hallways. So I was like, you know what? That is the thing that I've been looking for. So inquired into it. And one of the things that turned me on right away was the captain I called was really pretty harsh about it. He's like, hey, I don't need you. I don't need you for numbers. This is hard. Prove to me why you want to do this and why you would be good at it. And I was hooked after that.
And that was on a phone call?
It was on a phone call followed up by in person. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. And so what made you was that since as being a kid, you wanted to do something like that, or what was the draw? What was the thing that made you want to do something like that?
Well, I think initially, really two things. So I've had Marines ask me this same question. And when it comes down to why did I want to be a Marine and why do I want to be specifically a Marine officer, really three things. So I wanted to first lead Marines specifically. I wanted to give back to my country, and I wanted to challenge myself.
And so which of those is the oldest desire?
I'd probably challenging myself.
Right.
Yeah.
And I guess that's what I see from you as a sibling. Growing up, you were the one who kind of drove us. You were kind of our drill sergeant when we were out on the farm and making sure things got done. And you were always the hard worker and kind of the one who really pushed yourself. And I think that when you told me back at what year was that when you joined first?
Well, so I first applied for it in 2007 and went to OCS in 2008.
Okay. Yeah. So back then I remember you telling me, it was just kind of like, oh, yep. It just made sense. And I think at the time I had been in Omaha for 3 years already. So you and I actually really didn't have a whole lot of communication or even friendship or brotherhood for 3 years. It was really a long time.
No, friendship and brotherhood.
No. Right. I don't mean it went away, but of course, I guess we weren't together. Of course that was always there, but the directness was not there because I was, a state away. But it was interesting though that I remember you told me, I don't remember how or when, but I remember hearing it and you told me, it's like, oh yeah, it's just like that was kind of the obvious solution almost, even from my mind, that you were joining the Marines. And so what happened next? So once you got hooked on it from this captain, what was the next step?
Well, so you go through an officer screening process. And they say about 1 in 7 makes it through that to get to OCS. So going through the officer screening, you do a bunch of naturally physical type of tests. You do some mental tests. They look at your GPA. You have to get letters of recommendation. You have to write an essay, letter of intent type thing. And they put that all together. And then first of all, see if you're eligible, no face tattoos or health issues. You have to go through a pretty extensive health screening. And then once you get through all of that, I got the notification that I was finally accepted. And actually that's after being denied 3 times prior to that. So on the 4th time, I was finally accepted, and then went to OCS summer of 2008.
Okay, so be honest with me. When that happened, did you immediately go and watch the movie Rudy? Because that sounds pretty identical. I mean, come on, the constant rejection. Okay, you're not like a little guy like Rudy, I guess, but still the rejection. And then, so what were you rejected because of physical stuff, or was it just they just rejected you because they did, like, you didn't get the job, kind of?
Well, no. So believe it or not, it was because on my medical screening questionnaire, it says, do you have or have you ever had asthma? Yes or no? No. And it says, do you or have you ever used an inhaler? And I said yes, because I remembered back when I was probably 5 or 6 years old, I had used an inhaler, I think for bronchitis or something like that. And that single yes answer took like 6 months and 3 rejections to finally get through. So, but I did finally sent different BUMED waivers and worked with a couple folks, and just didn't stop.
Okay, and so then after being accepted into OCS, what was next? Did you immediately fly off to training, or did you have some time to wait, or how did that go?
Yeah, so I got put in a waiting period. So this was during OEF, of course, and there was a surge in officer candidates, which was cool because you got to be a part of that, but it also backed up the schools and the training as a result. Also made it more competitive in certain areas too. So I had to wait. I got accepted in, I think it was February or March of 2008, and then went to OCS in June, or I guess end of May 2008.
And so at that time, you had already finished a few years of college, and you were dating, or what was your relationship at the time?
Yeah, so I was a junior in college and was dating Nicole.
Gotcha. And so then as you were dating and as you had finished the junior year, you went to officer training. Right. And so what was that?
Senior year when I got back.
Got it. And so how long was officer training?
It is 10 or just shy of 11 weeks.
Gotcha. And in Virginia?
Virginia, yep. Quantico, Virginia.
And so give me a brief. Yeah, I was gonna say, give me a brief summary of what you went through in OCS.
Well, it's hard. I won't deny that. But some of the best leadership, soul searching training I've ever been a part of, to be totally honest. We started, we dropped more than half of our class, which, at the time you see it and it's you got different emotions going on. You got some like, holy cow, I can't believe this guy just got dropped. You got some like, holy cow, am I going to be next? You just have this overwhelming urgency, I guess, to compete. And that not only just compete, but also, they put the importance of why it is important to be the best, or be really good at this, right at the very front of everything. So it just heightens all the emotions. So it was pretty rough. The biggest thing I struggled with there, to be honest, was sleep. So I was good with the physical stuff. I was good with the academic stuff, leadership stuff I was good with, but sleep just killed me.
Okay. And so was there a time at all, did it ever cross your mind that you wanted to quit?
Yeah, there was once. So this is kind of an embarrassing moment, but I'll go ahead and share it for you and your listeners. But so we, first of all, running in boots and utes, what we call them. So boots and pants and a pack and everything is an entirely different thing than running in tennis shoes, as you can imagine. And there's one of our very first boots and utes runs. We had our rifles and our helmet and our gear and our boots and everything. And I wasn't used to running in boots at all. I should have done way more of that beforehand. And it was after class, and we just started running. Had no idea how long it was going to be, what we were going to do, and we were just running and running and running and running and running. And the lowest part of my entire OCS is when I thought to myself, I could trip right now, hit my head, go unconscious, and not have to finish this run. I didn't, thank goodness, but that was a turning point for me, because after that, then it got better. But that was probably my low point.
So what pushed you forward? Why did you continue? Why did you not trip and hit your head?
Because I passionately like to win and passionately hate to lose. And I think that was probably part of what, and I guess that, and really more than that, it's how you are perceived by your peers and the people around you. Because if you show weakness, especially in the Marine Corps, you get crushed. And I didn't want to let my buddies down.
And that's yeah. I mean, that's something that I really want to talk about, leadership and stuff later. But I think that's a really interesting point. I think about being competitive and wanting the best, and even peer pressure to a point. I think the Catholics can also very much take that as an example of how we have to be too. I mean, we are on a run, right? We're on a run to eternity, and we're trying to, if it's in boots or if it's in shoes or barefoot, I mean, all we're trying to do is reach that end. Now we're not racing against other people, but we're racing, I guess, with the devil in the world trying to pull us down. Sure. I mean, that's a really good, I think that's a good idea for all of us to remember that, hey, like we've spoken in previous podcasts, that when you think you're at your worst, if you get through that, that's oftentimes, I think, when you come out much better on the other end.
Yeah. I mean, the way I see it is that weak people avoid challenge, strong people overcome it, and exceptional people seek it out. Now, I'm not suggesting that I'm exceptional, but that is how I see challenge.
No, and if you want to be exceptional too, right? I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's something that I was originally going to call it this show about leadership and good ambition, but then I looked up the word ambition, and according to I think the Catholic Wikipedia or something, they say that it's actually, the word ambition actually is a minor sin, or it can be a major sin. So I think the word as we know it now, I think, has changed from the time. I think now we think of ambition as being just wanting to succeed and wanting good. I think, but anyway, I mean, the point being, I mean, to have that desire for betterness. I mean, I think that's absolutely huge, and I think that, I mean, you can speak to that too. So I mean, going through this OCS, I mean, how did getting through it? How did it make you a better person?
Well, yeah. So, I mean, on your earlier comment, things, methodologies and words change too, right? So St. Augustine of Hippo condemned curiositas, right? Curiosity. Mm-hmm. Okay. Called it a perversion of God's natural law, I think is what he called it. And then St. Thomas Aquinas came back and completely refuted that and said, no, absolutely not. Curiosity is what can bring us closer to God. So I think that, as things change, people change, times change, and that's why we have a church that can always stay the same in its fundamentals, but also change along as it needs to.
Right.
So for me, I changed going through the Marine Corps. Absolutely. No doubt in my mind that I became a better person by living those values. And then having the opportunity to lead people and directly impact in a big way, in some cases, people's lives, makes you look at your own life differently.
And so how soon after OCS were you leading other people?
The Marine Corps values leadership above many other things, but they make you work for it. So it was not until summer of 2011 when I actually had my first platoon.
Okay.
So
and in the meantime, what were you doing?
So after OCS, I went back and I helped the other officer candidates in Grand Junction do their work on their training. Graduated. I worked as an umpire in the meantime. That didn't really matter. And then went to TBS. So that's the basic school, which during OCS they tell you, it's not that bad. It's more like a college campus, but TBS is also difficult. Every Marine Corps officer goes through it, and then after that you go through your specialty schools, your MOS school. I did that in North Carolina, and then got to the fleet, where I was fortunate to go to the 1st Marine Division, one of the most storied units in the Marine Corps in Southern California, and then worked as an assistant platoon commander of sorts for a little while, and then got my own platoon summer of 2011.
And the 1st Division, is that the one? I don't know enough about Marine history, obviously, but are they the ones that were really famous in Vietnam for that long walk through the jungle? Is that the first? Or what are they famous for? I guess that would be what I ask.
So most famous for Guadalcanal.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
That's where we got our, if you look at the logo for the 1st Marine Division, it's the Southern Cross. And that's how the stars were in the sky during Guadalcanal.
Okay. Got it. And so during this time, during all these different changes, at what point did you get married?
So right between OCS and TBS. So I got back from OCS with this renewed sense of self-confidence and proposed to Nicole a couple months later, and then got married the following October. And then it was the following summer, 2010. So I was commissioned January 2010, married October 2009, and then went to TBS June 2010.
I wondered because I recently saw your wedding picture and you are not in dress blues. That's because you were not yet commissioned. Is that right?
Yeah. Not authorized to wear them. And I didn't have them. So.
Gotcha. Okay. And so during the time when you were in TBS, you were already married. I mean, how was that on your relationship? How was that with Nicole and you, and how did she deal with it?
Well, I mean, it was difficult, obviously. Didn't see a whole lot of each other during that time. She was also pregnant with Gavin. So I think we both did a lot of maturing and growing during that time. I've always said that shared hardship or adversity makes a group or team come together unlike anything else. That was one of my fundamentals that I had as a leader. And Nicole and I went through some shared hardship during TBS, but it made us come together unlike anything else could, I think.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's something that I saw, when I got to see Nicole and the both of you was right, that it really did take two, right? That she was also, the other side of the coin of that, the hardship and the courage of serving the country. And I think that's something that really, people shouldn't forget, is that you have, the men and the women serving the country. And then oftentimes you have the spouses and the families at home that are also going through plenty of sacrifices of their own. I think that we need to always remember to keep them in our prayers, because it's not the same struggle, but it is definitely a struggle at home as it is overseas.
Absolutely. And sometimes harder because as, active duty, anything, you've got typically this sense of purpose and drive and mission, and you know what you have to do. And a lot of times the spouse, they're in it with you, but they don't have the same camaraderie or network. And sometimes they just feel like they're in a holding pattern waiting for you to finish your training or finish your deployment or whatever it is. So yeah, they absolutely are not and should not be forgotten.
And so after going to Camp Pendleton, you were there for what, 2, 3, 4 years, right?
4 years. Yeah.
4 years. Okay. And in that time you were deployed, or was it after?
Yeah. So I deployed 3 times in Camp Pendleton. From Camp Pendleton.
And where did you go?
Went to Afghanistan the first time, and then went to Jordan the next 2 times.
Gotcha. And what was your overall experience, I guess, or what did you take back from going to Afghanistan and Jordan?
So a lot.
Yeah,
a lot of good, professional experience and skills. But I think one of the biggest things is that, so I'd been outside the country before, but that was my first exposure to very different cultures.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the things that stuck with me most is that different does not necessitate wrong. So we see other people that are different than us, and we think, wow, they're so different. They must be wrong because I must be right. And then you start to realize, well, there's typically a reason. Not always. Sometimes it's a bad reason. But there's typically a reason why they're different, and that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, right. Totally. Yeah, even in Germany, I've seen that. I think that has opened my eyes a little bit to yeah, exactly, just different cultures and different ways of life. And Germany is obviously not as big of a difference as I'm sure Afghanistan obviously is, but even here you can see, and it does make you appreciate that. Yeah, just because we're Americans and we're kind of told that we're always right, and we probably are, but I'm kidding now. But no, yeah, exactly as you say that yeah. I can't say it better than you did. So after coming back from Jordan and Afghanistan, you were eventually reassigned to cover the embassies, right? When was that?
So that was 2014, where I was actually given orders, but it was a long process trying to get the job to begin with. But yeah, 2014, moved from Pendleton to South Florida.
So across the country.
Yep.
And so you drove. So you drove
to the next.
Yeah, and you drove and it was with a new baby, right?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, Evie was just a couple months old.
Crazy.
2 dogs, a bird that didn't die. I was impressed.
Yeah, that's pretty traumatic. And so how was that? I mean, was that a culture shock too, just going from California to Florida? I mean, was that hard for you guys to settle in after having been in California for 4 years?
Well, so that's another good example of what we just talked about. So there are very different cultures just from California to Florida, to be totally honest. And the way I saw it is it's just different. Not necessarily better or worse, just different. And I thoroughly enjoyed it, but I also had, frankly, I had a cream of the crop type of position, so it was great for me. Nicole struggled with that a little bit more, especially because I was on the road a lot during that time.
Because you were going from embassy to embassy.
Correct.
Right. And so what was that job? If you can talk, I assume you can talk about it. What were you doing then?
Sure. Yeah. There's some things I can't talk about, but most of it's all open book. But so I start off as the regional logistics officer for Region 9, which covers the Caribbean, Central America, and Canada. And then 2 years into that, it's not a promotion, but it's a bump up to the executive officers, who just below the CO, for the same region, and responsible for the Marines deployed to the embassies and consulates for their training, their welfare, their deployment, and then ultimately the successful coordination between the diplomatic staff at those embassies and consulates.
So pretty big time stuff. A lot of responsibility.
Yeah. Talking with White House staff, CNN reporters and whatnot. You got to make sure that you choose your words carefully.
No kidding. Yeah. And so was that ever hard for you to not bring that home, I guess, when you have so much responsibility and almost, power is not the right word, but responsibility? Was that hard to come home and just be like, okay, it's still just my job?
Well, so I'm going to take a little bit of a different approach to that, because I did bring it home. Mm-hmm. I will say, I know Nicole would agree that it did not interfere with who we were as a family. We were still, we kept our family traditions and family togetherness and family dinners and everything like that, going full speed ahead all the time. But the truth of the matter is that it was more than a job. So I had, if an earthquake in Central America happened at midnight, I was on the phone and on my email and trying to figure out what the damage was and what the response is, and do we need, reinforcements and whatever else the case may be. So there was really not a separation. I always had my phone on me.
And was that something did that wear on you, or was that kind of a rush, I guess, if something like that happened, or I guess maybe a bit of both?
I loved it. So no, it didn't wear on me. And Nicole got to where she understood, and it was fine. I mean, to be honest, hard but fine.
Well, I think that's kind of the key again of the podcast, is that leadership. Someone has to take responsibility. Someone has to do these hard jobs and make hard decisions in really any point of life, and they're all different levels. I mean, if you're making decisions of what to do during an earthquake, that's a bigger decision than I'm ever going to make as a dad, living in Germany. But there's still that necessity to be able to make hard decisions and to be able to have the wherewithal to do that. And I mean, that's something I guess we'll save that for the end of the show, because I want to end the show with that. So I guess real quickly, how did your Marine career wrap up?
Well, so it wrapped up painfully because I loved it. I could easily have done this for another 20 years, or for a total of 20 years or more. But Nicole and I had many conversations on the pros and the cons and the what ifs and everything. And we just decided that despite all the great things that the Marine Corps had given us, and no complaints at all on that, the lifestyle that we wanted to create for our kids, especially, just wasn't quite going to work if we continued on with it. So we made the decision right just before that 10-year mark, where you cross over that and you're like, well, I'm already in it for 11 years. I might as well do another 9 and get the retirement. Mm-hmm. But we did it before that because we knew if we did one more tour that you can't really turn down the retirement. So it was extremely hard. But at the end of the day, I'm grateful for it. I think we made the right decision.
And I think that's interesting that eventually one of these leadership decisions was made for what you consider the betterment of the family. And I think that's obviously what we're all here for. No matter what jobs we have, the first priority is as family, as fathers especially, is to take care of the wife and take care of the kids.
Yeah, absolutely. Right.
And so now you are working, you live in Minnesota, and what are you doing exactly?
So a couple of things. So I'm the senior project leader with Boston Scientific. They're a medical device manufacturing company. So I get to lead lots of projects, as the name would suggest. Mm-hmm. And I'm also the site lead for our vets employee resource group, which is cool. So I get to stay in touch with that. And then right now I'm looking at becoming the CEO of a veteran nonprofit. So definitely get to stay very involved with veterans and continue in a different phase, different light, but continue what I was doing before that I left.
And does that kind of help to fill that hole that I'm sure you're missing of the guys? Because you hear this from athletes, and I'm sure this is a much lower level, of course, athletes compared to soldiers, but you hear from them the things they miss the most when they retire. As Peyton Manning would say, the thing he misses the most is the guys in the locker room, not necessarily playing the football game. And I imagine that must have been pretty hard to give up that camaraderie.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, I've got friends at work, and I've got friends in different areas and whatnot, but it's not the same. Not saying it's better or worse, but it's definitely not the same sure. As the camaraderie in the Marine Corps. And
so for the nonprofit, what is that about?
So it's called Project Got Your Back, and we're going through a big transition right now. That's part of me becoming the CEO, is that we're going to be focusing a lot on this navigation piece, is what we're calling it. So really, it's a mentor-mentee type of program where we are going to be helping veterans decide what direction they need to go and help them get there. Cool. So if they need medical help, we're going to point them in the right direction. If they need, whatever else, GI Bill help, we're going to send them there. And we've built this really robust network of service providers throughout Minnesota over the last couple of years that we can tap into, and I think really provide a lot of value for a lot of people. So it's really excited.
And that's something that I think there are many people, and I don't know how many people will listen to this podcast, but many, I think, who do want to contribute to such, nonprofits and maybe give their money to an organization that they know their money is getting where it needs. Is that something that, do you have a link, or is there a way that people can contribute to that, or how does that work?
You betcha. Yeah. So if you go to project.gotyourback.org, there's a real easy donate link button on the top. The website is under construction, so it's going to have a different look and feel here pretty soon. But yes, there is. You can always contribute to that.
Awesome. No, and that's the question. Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's, as Catholics too. I mean, it's one of our primary things that we should do is going out and taking care of the poor and needy. I mean, this is a work of I can't think of the word, a corporal work of mercy, and these are things that we're strongly advised to do, to clothe the poor and to feed the sick, and I think that, I mean, especially the veterans who went and served our country, first of all, they should absolutely have a good path and be taken care of. And again, just to be able to give to somebody who we know we can trust, like you, that's pretty awesome. So definitely go to this website and donate for anyone who wants to contribute to that. Okay, Paul. So to end the show, I want to talk about leadership and your advice. I mean, again, like you said, you were really leading many, many men in many difficult situations. What's your... This is a really hard question because it's very general, because anyone listening can be, who knows, maybe a teenage guy, maybe they're a mother of four. I don't know. I mean, what's your advice, especially for men, for just in general leadership?
Well, I could probably write a not very good book on the topic, because I have lots of thoughts on it. But one of the first things that comes to my mind is that when you're a leader, in your own mind, you need to be the least important person in the room. You are the least important part of the team, even though to everyone else's, you might be the most important, because you have to focus on the people you're leading and setting the conditions for their success, rather than looking out for your own.
Yeah, that and so obviously, again, that's regarding families, and that's regarding anyone you might have to lead. Now, what about for people? I've seen this a lot with men in these days, that I think a lot of society is pushing men to not be strong, to not be leaders, to not have a backbone. And what's your advice for them? How do they overcome this? And I know men want to be. Our natural instinct, I think, is to be fathers and to be men. I mean, how do they overcome some of what society is making us into?
I'd say, so a couple of things on that. I'd say one other part of my fundamental belief system is that the worst thing in the world to be fragile with is yourself. So there are certain things that are totally fine to be fragile with. They're going to be different for each person. But if you're fragile with yourself, and whatever that means to you, whether it's physically, emotionally, academically, whatever it is, you are not setting yourself up for any kind of success or the people around you, whether it's social, financial, spiritual. You have to look at yourself as something that's not fragile, which of course means you have to develop yourself into a person who's not fragile. When you walk with a purpose. When you talk to be understood. And when you listen to understand. And just don't be fragile with yourself.
It's good advice. It's really interesting, as you said, walk and talk the talk kind of. I had a friend who I knew in high school, and in high school, this guy was just a good guy, like a good friend of mine. But he was lazy, and he never had his shirt tucked in, and his hair was a mess, and he didn't really give a darn, and for years I didn't see him. and I heard that he joined the Army, I think the Rangers, and he was a member of the Rangers, I think, for quite a few years. And I didn't see him 5 or 6 years, and eventually he just kind of showed up, and I saw him, and it was just I was so shocked by the difference in him, and not just the uniform, but actually I don't think he was not wearing a uniform. He was not wearing a uniform, but the way he stood, the way he held his glass, the way he spoke, it was a totally different person, and in a good way. I mean, really a very improved. He was still the same guy that I really liked in high school, but he had this gravitas, and when he spoke, he said things that he thought through, I think. And I think that maybe that's something that you might learn in the armed forces, if you do it right, I suppose.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. There's also bad things you can learn in the armed forces, and there's certainly other ways to get you there. But if you, at the end of the day, if choosing easy leads to easy choices and hard consequences. And if you choose hard and do hard things, you're going to end up a better person. We have a thing that I have the kids say all the time, maybe not every day, but maybe every other day, where it's simple, but I'm hoping that eventually they're going to look back 20 years from now and they're going to remember it. But it's just doing hard things is good. So if they're struggling with a math problem or they don't want to clean their room, I always make them say doing hard things is what? And they know exactly what to say. So doing hard things is a good thing to do.
Yeah, and I think that's a great example again that this goes down to kids, right? That this is something that you can literally do from 5 years old to 50 years old, that you're overcoming weakness. And again, that's such a Catholic principle that weakness is temptation. It is the devil. It is the world. And no matter what that weakness is, our entire goal is to overcome it so that we make it to heaven.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my life's goal is to be my children's hero. And by holding true to the values that I have as a Marine, as an American, as a Catholic, and showing them instead of just telling them, I think I like to think that I'm on my way to doing that.
Yeah, and that's of course as parents, boy, that's what we got to look for. And I think that's the last bit of advice I want from you is especially for young people, anyone who's young who might be listening to this. For anybody. I mean, what is your advice for being Catholic but having good worldly ambition? And again, ambition being the good ambition, the ambition to find success, to be able to take care of your family. How do you balance faith and success?
So my belief is that they can exist together very well. They don't always. And I think sometimes when you see someone who is ambitious, who has forsaken their values, it may be because of their ambition. Got it. But it's really easy to say, well, look at this person. He has money and has different values than I do, or whatever it is. Therefore, it's the result of the ambition. And I think, again, for some people that's true, but it absolutely doesn't have to be. Money itself, in that term of ambition, isn't important. Nicole and I talk about that all the time. Money is not important, but that's a big but for anyone who's listening. It does make the important things far more reachable, and can be used for a tool for good better than almost any other tool, as long as you stay disciplined and centered. Yeah,
exactly right. And I think that it's all about, of course, you have to have your priorities right and everything in moderation. But if your first priority is making it to heaven, then like you say, I mean, if you have money and you can support the church and you can support organizations and become the CEO of an organization helping veterans, I mean, these are types of things we should aspire to. Not everyone can do these things. That's fine. I mean, everyone has a different level of success, I guess. But they shouldn't look at it as, hey, this is his level and my level is much lower. I think that's also a fallacy, I guess. I mean, how would you? Again, it's a hard question, but how can people set goals that are achievable but also big enough to be worth it?
Well, I mean, I'd say by remembering that the fear of failure makes failure more likely to begin with. So if you're afraid that you're going to fail at something and that causes you to not do it, that's your first mistake. And if you have an ambition, whatever it is, not limited to money, and you have it for the right reasons, and if you live with an attitude of not being fragile with yourself, and if you can pursue it without forsaking your other values, then you should quite simply do it.
Perfect. Yeah, I mean, couldn't agree more. Now, I think we're about ready to end the show. Is there anything you want to say, anything we missed, anything you would want to comment on to wrap things up?
No, I mean, I think we covered a lot. This was good. I've got, I mean, we could keep talking as we often do, but no, totally. This was definitely good. I think you can be a Catholic and you can be a Marine at the same time. You can be a Catholic and a dirtbag at the same time. Right. We're products of our own decisions, totally. And people who think that they're products of their environment always will be.
Amen to that. Yeah. Anyone who has any questions for Paul, please go ahead and comment on this video. You can also email me. I'll leave my email address in the comment section. You can send the emails to me. I will forward it to Paul if it is a good enough question, I suppose. And I'm sure Paul would be very happy to answer some good questions if it's regarding his nonprofit, if it's regarding his time with the Marines, if it's regarding being a father, etc. I know Paul is very good for giving advice to anyone who might need it. I'm sure, Paul, hopefully that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
I'll filter them through, but please, send them to me. I'll add that to the comment section of this YouTube video. Everyone, thank you so much for listening. Subscribe, like, share this video so that we can make more content and continue to try to share Catholic culture and some Catholic stories. Paul, thank you very much for coming on.
You bet. Thanks, Kevin.